So good evening. The purpose of having this editor's office hour on the first Monday of every month is just to have an open dialogue, open communication, just to chat, to see if you have any questions, suggestions, or just come and say hi. So if any of you as author or as reviewer or as reader have any question, and I'm here. If I have an answer, I will give you my straight answer. And Professor Bahalis is here as well. He's also a journal editor, and he's on the editorial board of Tourism Management, along with other journals. So we have another expert here if you want to hear a second opinion.
Hi, Professor Xu.
Hello.
Hi, Professor Bahalis. My name's Jing. I'm a second-year PhD student from Curtin University. Actually, I have one question about recommending reviewers. Because I have a paper that's has been under review in tourism management for a long time. And with the new tracking system, I can see that it's hard for the editor to find the reviewers for our paper, as our paper is a little bit technical. So I was wondering, at this stage, can we recommend potential reviewers to the editors?
You're welcome to send us an email. And because you cannot access the system now, it's already out, right? So as an author, you don't have access to it, but I know people now are monitoring the progress. If you if you think we have difficulty of finding reviewers, you're welcome to. Can you see which editor is handling your paper?
Oh no, I cannot see that.
Okay, so you can send me an email and then just tell me your manuscript submission number. I will find out who's handling the paper, and I'll forward that message to the handling editor.
Thank you, Professor Xu.
You're welcome. It's good to know that. I just realized that people are tracking the progress, maybe just only since the last 2 months or so, and I thought that's a very good service provided by Elsevier, and keep us on our toes as well, because we know you're checking.
That's very helpful.
Hello, okay. Professor Xu.
Hi, Fanzhou.
You can hear me, right?
Yes.
I have a question. Actually, on behalf of some authors, especially some authors based in mainland China, they have inquiries about the co-responding author issue and co-first author issue. Could you explain about our rules here to the audience?
Okay.
Just to clarify.
Okay. Maybe different journals have different policy, or journals in different disciplines may have different policies or practices different from tourism management. But in our guide to authors, we specify each paper can have only one corresponding author. I mean, by definition, corresponding means I correspond with you, right? So I can only correspond with one author about this submission. So whoever submit the paper will be the corresponding author. So all the communication, the author team with the editor will be the corresponding author. And then there can only be one first author, because we have to list in publication the list of authors. So you have first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. You can say that all the authors contribute equally, which happens in some cases. That's fine. You can make that declaration, but there is only one first author, one second author, one third author, one fourth author, because that's the way the authorships are listed. And when people cite your work in the future, if it's more than 3, then they will say author X ETAL, right? So it doesn't make sense to have two first authors. So in the author's guide, we state that each paper can have only one corresponding author, and that's the person submitting the manuscript, and all the letters will be sent to that person. And if the author team has any inquiries, that's the person who should contact the editorial office or the editorial team. And then, of course, once it's published, then we have a list of authors. And then somebody has to be listed first. That means first author, second author, third author, fourth author. And we do have the authorship statement required. So each person needs to declare the role that he or she played for the paper. And you're welcome to declare that all 5 of you, for example, contribute equally. However, you have to make the decision whose name goes first. And I assume if you have a team of 2 or 3 or 4, you will work on more than one paper. If you truly believe everybody contribute equally, then I hope you can publish 4 papers, then you can rotate the authorship. That's your team's decision. It's not the journal's decision. So I hope that clarify the policy.
Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Professor Schultz. I'm Danny. I have a problem. Would like to ask you. I have a submission to an A-star journal, and I have 3 reviewers, and one reviewer suggested reject, but another 2 suggest major revision, and finally the editor give the decision is major revisions. So in that case, I would like to ask you whether it's possible for me to persuade the reviewer that rejected and let him to get the positive feedback after the revision round. Yeah.
Well, I think if the editor gives you a chance to revise, that means
Yes.
the editor sees the potential, right? The person who suggested rejection, it depends whether the suggestion to reject is to reject the current version or to reject the paper completely, right? So depending on the comments that person gives you, if it's a fatal comment, if it's a comment you cannot address, then obviously you're not going to change that person's view. But if it's something that you think can be revised, whether it's something that you can make it more clear, any misunderstanding, more details need to be provided, additional analysis, additional review. If that's the things that can be addressed, I don't see why not. Reviewers could very well change their assessment after the revision.
Yes. One more question. In that case, after I submit the revision version, the manuscript will be sent to the same reviewer, including the reviewer who rejected.
Most likely, I cannot say this for all the journals and all the submissions, but most likely, that's the reasonable things to do, right? You want to have the same person look at the same paper, but sometimes reviewers would say, no, I don't want to look at it again. Let's say you have 3 people give you comments and you resubmitted it. The editors invite the 3 same reviewer again, but 2 of them say yes, and 1 of them say, no, I'm too busy, right? Not available, sorry. Then it's up to the editor to see whether to seek an additional new editor. So it's not 100% guarantee, but normally that's what editors do.
Yes.
Professor Bojales, do you agree? Yeah.
Yeah, let me unmute. Yeah, absolutely. Look, go to the same reviewer, and hopefully you'll work with the same reviewer to improve the quality of the papers. Because if it goes to new reviewers, they may ask you for totally different things.
Yeah.
So you really need to work with the reviewers and the editor to make sure that you are consistently asked to do a few things in order to publish this. Now, Kathy, if you allow me, I'd like to go to the previous question for 1 second, because something that we see quite often now in tourism review is that we are asked to change authors order, or to increase authors once the paper has gone through 1 or 2 reviews. And we've now have a policy of no change on anything. Whatever comes in stays that up to the very end.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, we have that in the guide for authors as well for tourism management. Once you decide the authorship, normally we don't allow any changes. If you really do have a very special reason, then we require all the authors to send in their consent. In other words, if you have 3 authors, now you add 1 more for a very particular reason, you have to have that additional authors, then all 4 authors need to sign and consent and explain why that's the case. Otherwise, yes, you really need to think very carefully before you submit a paper, who are the authors and the sequence of the authors. Yeah, and also talking about the reviewers, yes, we try our best to keep the same set of reviewers for initial review, second review, third review. But sometimes, like I said, we cannot guarantee that. Sometimes the reviewers say, well, I'm too busy, I cannot look at it again. I don't want to look at it again because for whatever reason. And also, if we have 2 extreme opinions from the reviewers, then it makes sense to get another view. So we may invite additional reviewers coming in just to take a fresh look. So that is possible as well. But I would say for 90% of the cases, we stay with the same group of reviewers.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Su, for your answer.
You're welcome. For authors who are thinking about submitting papers for any journal, I think you've seen the post on TriNet in the past couple of weeks. 1 point raised by the editors is the fit of the paper with the journal. I know that maybe if this is the first time you're submitting a paper, it's difficult for you to judge the specific focus of the journal, but each journal has a different bit of positioning. So you should try to submit that to the journal that is most appropriate for this paper. Some of them are easier to identify. For example, if it's an event journal and whether your paper is about events, if it's a technology journal, whether your paper is about technology, and for tourism management, whether your paper is about management, right? So if you submit something that is more on the philosophical, social sciences, conceptual in nature, then probably it's not a good fit for tourism management. So in order to help you go through the desk review, meaning for your paper not to be desk rejected, the fit is very important. How do you identify the fit? Probably you'll go through the past issues, not all the way back 20, 30 years. Just look at the past maybe 3 to 5 years to get a sense of what kind of paper get published in this particular journal. And then you get a sense of whether your paper will fit to that journal before you submit. That will increase your chance a little bit. Always read the guide for authors. Every journal has different rules and regulations and formatting requirements and all that. Yes, it is a lot of work especially if your paper, for example, get rejected by one journal and you want to submit to another journal, you have to read the guide for authors again. You don't just submit it without any changes, because you follow journal 1, you follow the guidelines of journal 1, you get rejected, and you turn around to submit it to journal 2, that has a different guidelines. If you don't change, then you're not following that journal's guideline, and probably your paper will get that's rejected. So yeah, every journal is different, and then make sure you read the guide for authors before you submit. Any other questions?
Hello, Professor Xu. I'm Kaiti from Bournemouth University.
Hi.
And hi. Yeah, I have a question. It's about the new reviewer, the early stage reviewer. So from the editor's perspective, do you have any suggestions for the new reviewers, like the time management or the detailed comments? And from the editor's perspective, what are the most common problems that happened on the new reviewers? Thank you.
A consistency. Because you as a reviewer are helping the editors to make the decision, right? So the comments, the written comments, and then the final recommendation. The final recommendation is usually accept, reject, or major revision, minor revision. If you suggest a reject, you need to give author enough of evidence, enough of reasons to understand why you're suggesting a rejection. You are putting the editor in a very difficult position if you click reject and yet you keep saying this is a good paper, this is, the introduction makes sense and methodology is rigorous, and then the editor reject the paper, the author will be like, why are you doing that, right? The reviewers are saying this is a good paper. So consistency. What is your final recommendation and what are the comments that you provide? If there are major problems, major issues that cannot be fixed, obviously that's a rejection. If there are issues that you think can be fixed, it's not for example, experimental design. If the design is wrong, it's a rejection. If it's not enough detail, for example, then you can ask for detail, right? So that will be a major revision. So you're helping the editors to make the right decision and help the authors to understand why was that decision made. So I will say consistency, and then you should try to provide sufficient comments. If you're only doing a paragraph, that probably is not enough for the authors to learn from you. Again, reviewers are providing expert opinions. Reviewers are taking on the role of mentorship, mentoring the authors. So if you're basically saying, this is not a good paper, the authors don't know why, right? So you need to provide some recommendations, some direction of how can they improve the paper. So I would say a good review will be probably a page in length that you provide sufficient information. I know some reviewers spend a lot of time in providing like 2 or 3 pages, and some of them even go through the paper and then scan the paper in PDF file and attach it to the review. And those are great, but probably it's not reasonable to expect everybody to do it that way. But I would expect probably a good review will give me about a page full single-spaced comments so that the authors can learn from you. And you as authors, I know some people like to receive a lot of comments, but when you see a lot of comments, you feel discouraged, right? So it's kind of like both. But I think the more comments you provide, the more helpful you are to the editors and to the authors.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor.
Yeah, you're welcome. And try to be polite. Being polite and saying everything is good, they're different, right? So you don't have to say this is wrong, this is definitely wrong, I don't like this, and you don't have to be derogatory in your statement, but you want to be clear and specific and helpful and honest.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Hello, hi, Professor Kathy.
Hi.
Rachel from Middlesex University. I think previous other colleagues asked about question in terms during the review process or maybe after the review process, and probably ask a question before the review. So it means that like how we can prepare the manuscript for the submission. So 2 questions specifically. The first one is about the data. So some data we collected before the pandemic. So now, after the pandemic, is that still valuable to publish those kind of data? The second question is in terms of the methodology. So we have lots of quantity paper, we have lots of quality paper. What about the mixed methods papers? And then what kind of proportions for each part? How can we make the papers more reasonable? And then, yeah, that's the questions I want to ask. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Good question. Data, depending on what your topic, some things change with time, some things don't change, right? But I can understand your question of pre-COVID versus post-COVID. I guess if you can convince the reviewers and the reader that whatever you study, it hasn't changed because of COVID, then that should be okay. But you have to make it clear, why do you think it hasn't changed, right? So you need to make that clear. Otherwise, yes, people will always be thinking, oh, now it's different. Now it's post-COVID. Will the same thing happen? And the other possibility is you collect an additional smaller set of data to verify the finding from the pre-COVID data. And that will be a way to increase the validity of your finding. And actually, I think I've this week saw a paper did that. And I thought that's smart, right? So they could, because I started reading and was like, oh, 2015, 16. Then you have that question of, is it still valid? But then later on, I saw that, oh, they collect another batch of data to verify the previous finding. So that relates to the data, whether you can defend it, whether you can defend that the situation, the phenomena hasn't really changed, or you collect fresh evidence to support the previous data finding. In terms of the proportion, if you do a mixed method, I guess depends on what is your main method, whether the main method is qualitative or the main method is quantitative. I've seen papers starting out with qualitative and then leading as a pre-study of the quantitative study, or I've seen study using quantitative study as a main and then using the qualitative as a way of triangulate the results. So depending on what is the focus of the study, there's no clear cut in terms of what's the percentage with, between qualitative or quantitative. But we do see more and more study using mixed method. Again, that is a good thing because we want to increase validity of the finding, try to get information from different sources using different methods, reduce common method bias and all that. So yeah, we do see more and more mixed method study. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Going back to the earlier question about reviewers, what reviewers can do. Some reviewers always suggest additional references, which is good for authors, because if you are the expert in that particular area, you know the literature well, and if you think the authors have not cited or make reference to 1 or 2 or 3, depends, additional pieces of information, you're very welcome to offer the list of references for authors' consideration. However, if all of those references are your own work, that would raise the eyebrows of editor and also of the authors. So if you have a paper, you review a paper, and then you provide 5 references, and they're all having the same set of authors, that may kind of communicate to the authors who you are, and that kind of break the blind review, double blind review mechanism there. So I would try not to do that. even if your publication is very relevant to the study and they missed it, maybe you just suggest one or two in addition to a few others, so that people will not obviously see that you are the reviewer. So we try to stay with the double-blind rule as much as possible. We would like to say that for all times. I understand sometimes it's difficult. And the same for the authors. If you do a lot of self-citation, reviewers will kind of guess who you are. And that could be a good thing, and that could be a bad thing, depending on if they like you or not. So that's the whole point about double-blind review. We don't want the reviewers to know who the authors are. We don't want the authors to know who the reviewers are, because we as individuals all have our biases, right? So if you do a lot of self-citation, if you disclose the university where you're affiliated with, where you do the data collection, or if you do a lot of detailed information about your study and about yourself, then the reviewers may be able to identify who you are. If you cite a lot of your own study, reviewers can identify who you are. So that could be a positive or negative piece of information. I would try to avoid that too as an author. Any other questions?
Well, if others do not have a question, I have a question on behalf of, I think most of the authors have this kind of inquiry about the duplicate submission to tourism management. Professor Xu, could you please clarify our policy of the duplicate submission? I mean, when submission was rejected, like that's rejected or rejected by associate editors, and then sometimes it comes with a revision as a revised, it comes as a new submission, and the duplication rate is quite high. So how to deal with it?
I see. Yes, that's a good question. Because we have a large number of submissions, that's why you need to do your homework before you submit to any journal. Study the guide for authors, study the fit of the journal with your paper, because you only get one chance. It's not like, okay, I submitted it and see how it goes. If it's not successful, I'll make some revision, I'll submit it again. No, it doesn't work that way, right? Because once your paper is submitted, it's recorded in the system. So once it's rejected, there must be a reason. The editor will give you a reason, whether it's not a good fit, whether the methodology, whether it's the, I don't know, whatever reason. Then you can take that piece of advice to revise your manuscript and submit somewhere else, but not the same journal, because that particular manuscript is already in the system. When you submit it again, the system will tell us, oh, this one was submitted before and it was rejected. Then that will become an automatic reject. How do we spot that? How does the system spot that? Based on the title of your article and based on the abstract of your submission. So it will do an automatic check. So unless you pretty much changed the majority of the content of your paper, have a new title, have pretty much a brand new abstract, otherwise your paper will be marked and saying duplicate submission, then it's very, very, very likely 95% chance that paper will be rejected, simply because you had a chance before. Therefore, we believe it's only fair for others to take advantage of the system. So that's why, again, going back to what I said earlier, it's really, really important for the authors to study the guide for authors before you submit your papers, because this is pretty much your only chance for this particular piece of work. So you have to make sure that it's in the best form possible before you go ahead and hit submission. if it's rejected and you want to completely revise, for example, you revise 70% or 80% of the manuscript, that's fine. You have a brand new title, a brand new abstract. You could be using the same data set, but you have a completely different story to tell, then that could be a different case. So I hope that's clear.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Hello, hi, Professor Xu. Again, another question, probably not at my stage, but I'm curious to know. I saw tourism management, they have a some like special issue call or maybe some curated collections. So how we can, for example, like propose a special issue, or how we can do this kind of curated collections. So any kind of suggestion, any kind of comments?
For tourism management, we have not done any special issue for many, many years. This year is the first time we did that. We're still doing that. The call went out only a few months ago, and there are only 2 special issues. We'll see how they go. Different journals do different journals do special issues differently. For some journals, or for journals in the past, special issues means, especially back when we had the hard copy, that means you really have one book, one special issue, right? Now it's all virtual, it's all online. So pretty much special issues are just a collection of articles that all address a particular topic. For example, we have mega event as a special issue, and then we have something about mental disorder, I think, as a special issue. So the call is out. The purpose of the special issue is to draw researchers' attention to those special topics, and hopefully we can generate more research in that area, and therefore we can encourage submission of papers related to that topic. The advantage of virtual special issue is we don't have to have X number of articles accepted to make it a special issue. Whereas in the past, if it's a book, it's a separate issue. For example, it has to have 8 to 9 papers to make it a special issue. Now with the virtual special issue, depending on the quality, if we only get 30 papers submitted and at the end we'll only accept 3 papers, that's fine. We put those 3 papers together as a virtual special issue. So we don't have to have 8 papers or 10 papers. That's something that will address the old perception that special issues are easier to get published in. It's no longer the case because we don't have to have so many papers. We can have the special issue call to get people's interest, to increase submission in that area, but it's still, at least for tourism management, special issues still goes through the same review process, still needs to meet the same quality requirements. So the currently, how do we decide on the special issue? The editorial team sometimes will receive a proposal, and then we will collectively make the decision to see whether this is a topic warrant a special issue. If it is, then we will help with the guest editorial team to set up the call for paper and then to go through the review process. But basically for tourism management, the review process is the same as regular papers in terms of number of reviewers that we need and also the quality standards. So we do that as a virtual compilation of papers. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Professor Xu.
Hi, how are you?
I have questions about the TM submission.
Okay.
Very, very detailed ones. I noticed that for paper submission, we need to submit author biography, and then author photo, and then title page with author details, especially the first, the author biography and the title page with author details. What are the differences between these? And
The
second
details are your, for example, you're a professor at this university, your email address, and then the biographies are just a short 2 or 3 sentence about who you are, your research interests, and anything you want to share.
Okay, so author details about
Your contact detail.
contact.
Yeah.
Biography is about the research interests.
Well, biography is your a very short introduction of yourself.
Okay. Another one is usually the tables and the figures are submitted in a separate file. But for TM, especially in the revision one, the tables and the figures should be put in the text. So this is the rules for all the first submission, the figures and the tables put in the text.
I think that's based on reviewer preferences, because we have received feedback from reviewers saying that they prefer to see the tables and figures in the text, that it's easier for the reviewer. And the attachment is for after your paper has been accepted, it's more for the production team to have a better resolution of a figure. For example, if you have a very complicated figure and you embedded that in the text, it's difficult for the production to produce a good, and also the production team needs to rearrange the layout of the paper. So that's why a separate file is required for the tables and figures. Does that answer your question?
So when we first submit the paper, we just put the figures and the tables in the text. But before publication,
you put the tables and figures in the text.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the preference for the reviewers.
Okay. Another one is like many years ago, TM requires the submission of highlights, but now there's no place for the highlights, or it's just to say if applicable. So instead, is the file we need to submit is the social impact.
Correct. TM does not require highlights. The reason is we found that nobody reads highlights. The reader's feedback is no, we don't read them. So then if people don't read, why do we include them, right? So instead of highlights, we require an impact statement. That is a 150-word impact statement. And that is the impact the research make beyond academic. So it's not about theoretical contribution, not about academic contribution. It's about what real life impact this study makes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And also about the data. If we need to submit the data file, there's no items for the data.
Yeah,
so we just put it in the supplementary file.
You don't need to submit the data. You need to have the data available. Only if the reviewers would like to see your data, then we will go back to you and ask for data, because it is now, a lot of people use big data, right? So it's not possible to upload the big data. So we ask you to make sure that your data are available if required by the reviewers. But if you do questionnaire survey, you need to upload the questionnaire.
Okay. Yes, because sometimes it's the data file is IBM SPSS, but when the submission for many journals is you can only submit the PDF file. So actually, it is not possible to submit the data file.
Yeah. So for TM, you don't have to submit the data for your initial submission, because like I said, nowadays it's impossible for some people to submit their big data.
Okay.
Mm.
Thank you.
You mentioned about impact statement, and you talk about social impact, which is good. Good to hear that you got that message. Many authors don't know how to write impact statement. It is not a copy and paste from abstract. It is not the same as abstract. Abstract is for the readers of the journal, whereas the impact statement is telling us what real life society, social, economic, environmental impact this particular piece of research could have. So we're talking about impact beyond research, impact beyond academia.
Okay.
Hello, Professor Xu.
Hi.
Yeah, hi, Kathy again. Yeah, according to the last question about the impact or the social impact statement, so is there any differences between the impact statement and the practical implication in a piece of research? Thank you.
Yeah, I think impact statement, since it's only 150 words, right? So usually it's quite, it's more general, whereas the practical implications are usually more specific. What specifically do you suggest? For example, if you do hotel study, what can the hotel managers do? For example, sustainability, right? If your study is about encouraging hotel guests to behave more environmentally friendly, in a more environmental friendly manner, then based on the results of the study, what can you suggest the hotel management team do to encourage people to do more sustainable consumption in the hotel? Whereas the impact statement is more general. For example, the research could help the hotel industry develop more sustainable management practices, and therefore will potentially reduce the environmental impact of the hospitality industry, something like that.
Clear. Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome.
Hello, Professor Xu.
Hi.
Yes. I had a short question. I see some journal, for example, TM. We have the editor-in-chief. We also had a managing editor. So could you explain the difference between the role of the editor-in-chief and managing editor, and also the final decision will be made by the managing or the editor-in-chief?
Okay, good question.
Yeah.
I will explain it now, and then I will also this week announce on TriNet, our YouTube channel. I already have a short video recorded, introduce a bit of everything about tourism management. So if you have time, you may want to take a look at that. For tourism management, again, different journals is organized in different ways, and even though with the same managing editor title, different journals use the managing editor differently. So for tourism management, once we have the editorial assistant check the formality. For example, we want to make sure it's double blind, author's identity is not revealed, and you have your manuscript page number, line number, and all that formality. Once it's checked, then the paper will go to managing editor. For tourism management, the managing editor will take a first desk review of the submission. And Professor Sungwon Park from Kyunghee University in Korea, he's the one to read all 1,900 submissions every year coming in. And then he will do the first screening. So usually about 65 paper goes through the screening that will come to me. So 65%. And I will read those papers myself. And then so that's the second layer of desk review. So if it passed his review, it will come to me. I will do another round of review. I may desk reject some paper based on fit between the purpose of tourism management and the scope of the research and a number of the issues. So I will review the 65% and I will desk reject some of it. And then once it passes my desk review, depending on the topic and depending on where the submission come from, myself and we have 3 associate editors will each get a portion of that submissions that pass the second layers of desk review. And then, for example, the 3 associate editors, they will do a third layer after myself. They will do a third layer of desk review, and they may desk reject a few of them, and then they will forward the others to reviewers. So 4 people, myself and the 3 associate editors, we will handle the desk review and then also the peer review process. Who makes the decision? Whoever handles the review. So we have 4 people making the decision for tourism management, myself plus 3 associate editors. Once the associate editors make the decision, whether it's accept, major revision, minor revision, or rejection, their decision is final. Their decision doesn't need to come to me. So I don't look at their decision. I trust them because all of them are very experienced researcher, experienced reviewer, and experienced editor. I trust them to make the decision because we already have 3 layers of desk review plus all the expert reviewers, right? The difference, however, for special issue, because somebody earlier asked a question about special issue editors are guest editors. They don't make the final decision. They will recommend a decision, and depending on the topic of that paper, it will come to one of the 4 members of the editorial team, myself or the associate editor. So the special issue submissions, again, the decision will rest with the editorial team based on the recommendation of the guest editor. So I hope that explained the process. I don't have a PowerPoint here, but in the video that I will release shows you who they are, and also there's a flow chart that will hopefully explain that process better.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. If you don't have any question, thank you very much for joining me today. Please help spread the words on your social media. I hope you still have the original poster that I distributed so that your friends or colleagues, if they're interested, they can come and join me the next time. And that will be the first Monday of November. And we will continue to organize webinars for authors and reviewers and keep the dialogue open, right? So, and of course, if you have any questions, you're always welcome to contact any of the editorial team members. And hopefully we can make the process more transparent and authors and can understand the decision-making process. And if you have any questions, then if not today, November, we can have this conversation again, but please help spread the words.